Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon,
How are you all?
sir. Good, doing good. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good
So,
to
how
know.
many students are there?
So we have
Because
a
currently I'm seeing four
no,
only.
we have a strength of 21 students. 20 to
Okay.
21. Yes.
Okay. So let us wait for a couple of more minutes. Let others join, then we'll start.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I think we should start now without waiting. Let others join in between. Okay. So let me introduce myself. I am Dr. KP Singh, currently teaching at Sri Shri University, Cuttack, as an assistant professor in the Department of English. I did my PhD from Kanpur University itself. So it is a rare privilege that I'm interacting with the students of Kanpur University. 12 years back, I got my PhD from there. I have more than 17 years extensive professional experience handling multiple aspects of organizational administration, teaching, research guidance, curriculum design, editorial responsibilities, and membership of committees in different roles. And I teach UG, PG classes and conducting PhD coursework classes also here. One student got research awarded under my supervision, and currently one is pursuing over here. I'm also member of departmental research committee over here, member board of studies. So this is my short introduction, and the objective of today's class on post-colonial research is to understand the origin and concept related to colonialism and post-colonialism, and trace the theoretical development along these lines. Since all of you are research scholar, it is very much important to understand theory and its concepts, how to apply theory in your research. Because all of you know very well that when we go for a research, we have to formulate research questions. We have to, according to our research area, we have to choose a particular theory and its application, research methodology. So all these things are very essential. So let us start with post-colonial theory. Okay. Am I audible clearly to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So since it's this session is up to 2:30, so we have
Right.
2 slots, because Zoom is only provides 40-minute session. So we will, when disconnected, we'll join again. Okay.
Right.
Actually, before starting this, I would like to put a question before all of you, that do you have any idea of this post-colonial research, post-colonial studies, colonization, colonized, colonizer. Any one of you can tell.
Yes,
so
sir.
there-
Post-colonial study.
One. Yes.
The post-colonial study basically refers to the study of literature and the developments in the sector of literature after the colonies were free from the colonial rule and their influence. So post-colonial literature is kind of very independent and very fresh in its own way, and it incorporates the middle class.
Only
in
middle
its,
class.
So not only middle class, but I would say that dominantly it focuses on the struggles of the middle class. Dominantly it focuses on that. So.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to add something?
Sir, hello, sir. Sir, I can tell,
Yes.
Sir, in the context of Indian history.
Yeah.
Sir,
Please.
I think that post-colonialism is something which signifies that comes not after the end of colonialism, but something which comes after the beginning of colonialism. That is the 18th century, when the British colonial power started expanding and their economic and political influence in India.
Yeah. Actually, when we study, we have to keep in mind, especially in Indian context, pre-colonial era, colonial era, and then post-colonial era. Okay, so we would find that what actually exists at that time in terms of literature, in terms of literary politics. Okay.
So I wanted to add one line.
Yeah, please.
It may be any country. Basically, in one line, post-colonial literature can be read as the exploitation which was faced by the colonizers on the colonized land. It may be any country, India or any other country. So
exploitation faced,
the writings of the exploitation.
Excuse me, I would like to interrupt here.
Yes.
Exploitation faced by colonizers or colonized.
No. So the colonized, which was which they which they were subjected to by the colonizer. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, by the colonized. Yes.
Okay. Good.
So we can understand.
Yeah. So just I will give you a background about this entire post-colonial theory. So let us start it. Actually, if we go conventionally, the study of English literature, especially in Indian universities, it's meant for the British literature, American literature. Okay. But when we talk about this category of post-colonial literature, actually it brings a very diverse area, a diverse area of literature. And you see texts from various parts of the world, Africa, Australia, South America, West Indies, Canada. So in this post-colonial literature, actually it is primarily intended for research scholars, postgraduate students, or those who are interested in this particular area of research. Actually, since this course is really important when we study against the backdrop of colonialism and resistance to colonialism. And this would also appeal to those who are, you can say, just want to enhance their perception about the cultural legacies of colonialism. Okay, so actually post-colonial literature is, in current time, it's a very fast expanding field of studies. That is why you see huge number of academic journals, monographs, conferences are organized, conference proceedings are there. Okay, so that we can really enhance our understanding about this. Now, first important thing is to understand the meaning of post-colonialism. Okay, actually when we talk about this, post-colonialism, it becomes very important that post-colonialism presents us with our first major challenge. I refer it as a challenge because for the past several decades, this particular area, post-colonialism, it has been used to mean several different things. Okay. And not only that, there is also no general consensus as to how the word post-colonial should be written. Should it have a hyphen? Sometimes we see that, there is a hyphen. So hyphen separating post from colonial, or should it be written as one word? Okay. So our first important task is to understand this confusion and clarify the meaning as well as spelling. Now, if you look at the word post-colonialism carefully, you will notice that the term is composed of two parts. The major component of this term is the word colonialism, but there is also a prefix, and the prefix adds a very important dimension, not to only our understanding, but the entire this field of research, and the term is post-colonialism. And if you go to the dictionary and look up the prefix, we simply find that post, which means after or behind, and when attached as a prefix before a noun, so we know very well that which denotes a particular event, post, which indicates something that happens or comes after that event. Now, for example, the word post-graduation, it also uses, it will mean I have completed my graduation and I am studying for a degree, okay, which can only be attained after graduation. Okay, so the simple meaning which we derive from this word when we use hyphen. Now, just decode this term, post-colonialism, by just applying the same logic, and then the term should mean the period after colonialism. Okay, if we apply the same logic which we have just used for this post-graduation, simply we come to know that a period which comes after colonialism. Now, if we try to understand this particular meaning from within the Indian context, okay, then we are almost inevitably directed towards a certain date. In August 1947, 15th August, as all of us know very well that India till 1947 was a British colony. And on this particular date, we ceased to be a colony and became a sovereign nation state. This should mean that the period in the history of India after the date of our political independence, it should be categorized as post-colonial. Okay, got the very, it is a very simple logic applied over here and a very simple meaning. So I will discuss why this understanding is problematic. Okay, but before that, let me state that this understanding of the term post-colonialism is not entirely wrong. Okay, you cannot say that it is wrong, but the word post-colonial, that single word with the hyphen separating post and colonial, has often been used to refer to the post-independence history of the states, which were once politically part of large European empires. Actually, this is not the mainstream understanding of the term within the field of post-colonial studies. Okay, for a layman, for common understanding, we can say this kind of description is okay. But mark this difference. The word post-colonialism is used without the hyphen by most scholars of post-colonial studies. Now we have to decode this word post-colonialism. All of you are getting? Huh? I think clear in my. Okay. If
Yes,
any
sir.
doubt,
Yes,
anything,
sir.
you
Yes,
can
sir.
raise finger. Okay. Okay. Fine. So
Okay.
I'm continuing. So, but what is the problem if we use post-colonial to mean post-independence? First question. Well, even without a well-rounded definition of colonialism at our disposal, I personally think we all will be agree that colonialism has a number of different aspects to it, and the political is but only one aspect of colonialism. To try and understand this further, let us go back the date which I mentioned about in 1947 more closely. Actually, what happened on that date? All of us know. On 15th August, the British monarch and the British Parliament ceased to have any direct political control over the affairs of India. Okay, try to understand here very clearly what actually we have to understand when we are talking about post-colonial studies. So British monarch and British Parliament ceased to have any direct political control over the affairs of India. India from that date became a politically sovereign nation state. But this political power, which Britain exercised over India till this date, was only part of what we understand as British colonialism. Okay. India, apart from the political domain, British colonialism also exerted a huge amount influence on the social, cultural, economic spheres of India. And that influence did not come to an abrupt end on the day India ceased to become British colony. Got the point? Means political control, that was over. But what about the influence on the social, cultural, and economic spheres of India? What about that? You know, if you look in today's context, even today, you might be familiar, we will later on include in a detail, we would have a detailed discussion on Bhabha's concept of hybridity. Sometimes we find the life which we are living, we are neither Indian and neither Britishers. So many things, we have adopted from them, and including festivals. So we have to understand that is why, when you talk about post-colonial studies, so just give in historical context actually is also very important to include here in the discussion. Pre-colonial era, what India was that time? Can you see after this, when we ceased to, as a British colony, then we went back in the same phase? No. Even today, if you just we look around, we find ourselves surrounded by legacies of British colonialism. Okay, it may be railway tracks or the language in which right now we are interacting. This is also a symbol of British hegemony. And perhaps you see the most profound, dominant, impact of British colonialism in India was economic. It was with the advent of colonialism that India became thoroughly integrated within a global network of capitalism. And even after, more than 7 decades after gaining this political freedom, we still remain integrated with what we call the network of that capitalism. So not everything that constituted British colonialism India has ended. With this, we come to a conclusion that everything not ended with that date. That is why, as far as understanding of post-colonialism within the Indian context is concerned, a date like 15th August 1947 does not prove to be very useful in this context, the study of post-colonial literature. Okay. Now, another question which arises here, is there any other way of understanding the term post-colonialism? Yeah, of course there is. If you think about the discussion that we had, with your, during your masters or during your graduations, we have had. So for you, will realize that we have been trying to understand, post-colonialism since we started reading this. Actually, post-colonialism as signifying things which come after the end of colonialism, which comes after the end of colonialism. As we have seen, many of the aspects which constituted the process of colonialism, and especially in the context of British Raj in India, actually it survived beyond our political independence, and even in today also. That is why sometimes we talk to a person and suddenly a thought comes, so this is a colonial mentality. Still that kind of slavery, that kind of aspect is, it is very much in our mind. So the impact of this colonial influence was such that India after colonialism, it emerged as something that was different from the India before colonialism. Okay, which India you are saying after this independence, after this colonialism, actually before that it was something different. That is why post-colonialism in this Indian context would therefore mean the sum total of all the various. Now this is important, make a note of this. Sorry, post-colonialism in this Indian context, okay, it means the sum total of all the various social, political, economic and cultural changes. Social, political, economic and cultural changes that started being perceived after the first impact of colonialism was felt. So, if you just go back and you observe, post-colonial India is not the India after 1947. Rather, it is the India which started emerging from the 18th century onwards, as the colonial power started spreading its influence across the land. Because when they come, generally why? When invaders come, they introduce their language, they introduce their culture, they introduce their, practices, because it becomes easy for them to control the native peoples. Those who have gone through Macaulay's Minutes, they can better understand what was the, purpose behind introducing, English education in India. They want to actually prepare those people who can work for them and
Sir,
create their own
actually,
culture.
So sorry, I'm interrupting you and
Yeah,
making
yeah,
a
you
point,
can.
but
Yes, yes.
actually, we can also see it as a part of the white man's burden, because in the black perspective also we have seen that that the whites were trying to colonize the African lands, and they were trying to civilize them just because they thought that they were savage, and it was their responsibility and their burden to civilize them. So can we see this in that
Actually, yeah, you pointed very correctly. But you see, if you are doing something, how will you justify? You need something to justify that. No? So white man's burden, what Rudyard Kipling, that concept is given in that in one of the poems. Actually, they think that white people are the privileged one, okay, chosen people of God. That is why they are subject to rule the world and civilize the uncivilized. And this concept they have. So that is why when you study that colonial literature, you see that they they are justifying, but you understand the hidden motives, what they were doing. Why today? I'm just giving you to bring more clarity. One example of there is one famous text, and you might have seen several movies, Indian movies, where you see that a son becomes IS officer or some Babu Saab, and when his farmer father comes to city, so he just doesn't, he introduces as a servant. Why this? In several movies you might have long back in 80s, especially 80s 90s movie, those who are fond of. Why it is so? Anybody can answer?
Sir,
That
what you
means he is not able to accept his own father.
So maybe because he is not so connected to his roots, and he feels ashamed
Yes,
of
yes, very,
introducing
the point which he is not connected with the roots, and
the
that was
roots.
the purpose. That was the purpose when in this process of colonization, in the process of English education, what they have done, they have disconnected us from our roots.
Sir, actually, in the Australian perspective also, I have seen a movie, so I would like to make it a point
Yeah.
that there's a movie called Rabbit Proof Fence. So the native Australians are being taken by the whites who have come to Australia just to colonize it, and they take away the tribals, they take away the Australian Aboriginals, and try to teach them their own mannerisms, the white mannerisms and the white way of living, just to make them connect lesser and lesser to their own original culture. It's a kind
Yes,
of
yes.
assimilation.
Yes, yes,
No,
yes.
sir, it's not assimilation, but that's what the point I was trying to make, because I saw this very nice movie, and this
Actually,
movie is very nice in the
you
terms of
know,
marginality also.
yeah. Actually, you see, even you go back and study British literature, just a history of English literature. When Angles, Saxons, Jutes, they came, what they did? They invaded, okay, and they introduced their language, Angles. And from that, the origin of this English language came into existence. Is it on? So, generally invaders or colonizers in the term which we use in current context, this is their purpose to actually, at gunpoint, not control maximum people. Okay. Masses cannot be controlled at gunpoint. Generally, then you have to rule the psyche. Ideas rule the world. So they come up in a planned way, and gradually they expanded. Okay. What they did, first they, taught their own language, and they proved that what your culture is bad, what your education, the dress you wear, it's not good.
So somehow you see that in nowadays advertisement, so many advertisement in just television, you see that how a person in a cafeteria, in a university cafeteria, so many students are sitting, and there was a bodybuilder also. Okay, and healthy body is a symbol of what? It's a good health, and it's a need, huh? But the concept of advertisement, the shirt which he was wearing, he just put aside. So at that time, waiter comes over there and takes the shirt and starts sweeping that, cleaning that table. Now suddenly, a person who is just wearing white shirt, and people just because he used Rin Supreme. So that is important. If you wear a shirt just clean by, washed by Rin Supreme, so that is more useful than a healthy body and all these things. And everybody starts laughing at them. So, this is just example how psychologically they tell us in a planned way. These advertisements are what colonizers have done. They, in a planned way, they told that what you have, that is not good. That is why we are here to teach you mannerism. We are
Sir, I
here
have one.
Yeah.
But I need to ask,
Yes,
sir,
Shivani.
can we relate it to can we relate it to hegemony? Because
Yes,
in
of
that
course.
also, that's a non-coercive authority. They just try to
Yes,
convince the
yes,
population that,
of
yes,
course.
sir.
Hegemony, and simply, even in the context of women, when you go to study feminism, you see that how it has been accepted by the scholars that women, they have been doubly suppressed, one by this colonial power, another by this patriarchal notions in the society.
Yes,
Now
sir.
you have to understand clearly that when we say we talk about women, how you just look at your family, and that psychologically they have accepted, okay, this male dominance in our society psychologically. Okay, there are so many texts which tell that. I would like to quote one Uriya text here, that the name is Rebati, and in this, that Rebati actually, she desires for education.
Yes,
Okay,
sir,
she
for
wants to
British
study.
education.
Yeah,
Sir Fakir
and
Mohan Senapati.
her grandmother is she is not in favor of that. She says that you are not meant for this.
Not meant for
Okay,
the education.
you are meant for what? Household chores. Okay, domestic work. Okay,
Sir, actually, in this work, sir, actually, they are trying to criticize the British kind of education, because by the end of the story, we see that all their families devastated and they lose all their wealth. And so the British kind of education and upbringing is seen as a kind of bane.
yeah,
And
you see,
which is hugely projected by her grandmother.
yes, and another aspect, you see, you might have gone through Mary Wollstonecraft.
Yes, sir.
Vindication of the Women. Okay,
Yes,
what's
sir.
the idea behind that? Education is the key idea. Okay,
Key
that
idea.
women, they need education, but
So women do not need to stick by their roles of looking physically desirable and accessible to men, but they need to focus on the educational aspect of their opportunities.
means women should be more concerned towards rationality. They must focus on education, but society made them to look beautiful. Okay, they spend
But
more
actually,
time.
the society is trying to divert their minds and just trying to overshadow them just by giving them different kinds of baits.
Yeah, so what society has done for women. Okay, so the colonizers, they have done to colonized, and they have justified this. What we are doing, that is true. I hope that the concept which I am discussing is very clear to all of you.
Yes, sir. Very satisfied, sir.
So, okay. Now you see, if we just now, actually, since we talk about this, we are talking about post-colonialism. You know, at this point, we have to also think about this a new concept of this, post-colonialism. Actually, if post-colonialism is the sum total of all the social, cultural, economic, and political changes that is brought about by colonialism, then are these changes relevant only in the context of the colonized country, not in the context of colonizing country? Question mark. Okay. Or you can say, when we talk about the British colonialism in India, can we only talk about the emergence of post-colonial India and not a post-colonial Britain? Question mark. Actually,
So,
these aspects are very essential to explore. Okay. Even, if we go for a, for this session, only 3 minutes are left. So if, and then is there any question in between? If somebody wanted to say something. Okay. So, we have to understand that even a cursory acquaintance with British history, if you go back from 18th century, that would tell us that British society was deeply affected by the process of colonization as the Indian society. Okay, you have studied, Romantic literature, then British, Victorian literature, then modern literature, British literature. I'm talking about. You can study the novels of that era. Old order changeth yielding place to new, lest one good custom should corrupt the world, by Tennyson. So he has somehow observed all these things. So, this idea of this, process of colonization, okay, means we see that British society was also affected by that. And in fact, this is not difficult to understand if we keep simply in mind that colonialism was ultimately a two-way traffic of ideas, people between the colonized and the colonizing nations. And it is therefore important to understand. And if we can talk about post-colonial in the India, and we can also, talk about post-colonial Britain and justify that. Okay, so now we'll start with, I think this idea of post-colonialism is clear to all of you. If any question, you can come up with that, and then we can start with colonialism. Okay, it's 1 minute left, so I'm not going to start colonialism in this session. So if anything, any query, any questions, so you can have. No question, nothing. Colonial literature refers to work written during period of time when one country was actively participating in the colonization, or what we say in another word, imperialistic exploitation of another geographic area. Okay, so
sir, in the theory, post-colonial theory,
it's
we
going
have
to
to
over.
use.
Anytime it can be disconnected. So keep your question for the next session.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
continue.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So, sir, I remember.
and
Sir, I remember
immediately
the
join.
question. So, sir, we have to use it without the hyphen in the word theory.
Yeah, because
While
you
discussing the
have
theory,
Yes, some questions were there. So you can continue with your question.
So that girl is yet to join. She's
Okay.
not joined yet.
She was asking that it should be used with the hyphen or without hyphen. Huh? So what should be? Vinay Kumar, can you say something?
So with hyphen, it refers to a time period, and without hyphen, it refers to theories that were dominant in that period. So is it right, sir?
Yeah. Actually, we are not concerned with the time period only. We are concerned very much with social, economic, political, cultural changes. Okay.
Right.
Because when we study post-colonialism, so actually it means the sum total of the different social, political, economic, and cultural changes that we started to perceive during the process of colonization. Okay, that is why it is very much important to understand this basic difference. We are not talking about only just a time period which came after post independence, and then we go ahead with this. Okay, so
Right.
that is why. So
Sir,
yeah,
Technically without
yes.
Yeah. Technically without the hyphen, it's preferable.
Yeah, it's scholars, because all of what I'm saying on the basis of various just different researcher scholars, what they have just how they have used this term, how they have just justified it. Okay, actually
yes, I was asking the same question when the
Right.
meeting ended. So, while referring to the post-colonial theory, should we use the hyphen or should we not use the hyphen?
actually, you are studying, we were talking about the same. Actually, when we use with hyphen, we talk about a period of time that comes after this period of colonization. Okay, but
Yes,
here
sir.
when we study this specific domain in post-colonial literature, so the entire study is sum total of political, cultural,
And the
social,
influence, yeah.
economic aspects, all that we study. That is why we have to use post-colonial without hyphen. Okay,
Okay.
as you know,
Thank
if you since that we have that text in post-colonial study, that the wretched of the earth, so one chapter we have to discuss there, so that will come that we will discuss later on. You people have the text of this, the wretched of the earth?
No, sir.
Okay, so okay. Actually, this is my WhatsApp number, and you just text a message with your name along with the reference. I'll share that text to you, and you when next week we would have class, then study this text. Okay, around 43 pages are there, this particular chapter.
Okay, sir.
So actually this The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, the origin of this post-colonial aesthetics, it lies in this book, okay, published in 1961, and it's a theory in when we talk about theory, so there is a famous work by Edward Said, and the work is Orientalism, which came in 1978, and the critical assessment of it, post-colonial theory, we give credit to Ashcroft, Griffiths, and Tiffin's epoch-making book, and that is, anybody can tell what is the
yes,
name
sir.
of that book?
It's The Empire Writes Back.
Yeah, very good. the Empire Writes Back, which came in 1989. So The Wretched of the Earth, Orientalism, and the Empire Writes Back. So if you want to enhance, especially those who are going to choose the area of research in this particular field, post-colonial research, must study these books. Okay, I just recommend that all of you must read entire book. This is where this will really help you to understand the concept of post-colonial theory in a better way. Actually, while making an analysis of this theory, post-colonial theory, it becomes very important on my part to explain not only the term post-colonial, but how the significance attached to it in present context. Okay, you see, like the term postmodernism. Postmodernism, you are familiar, there is a term postmodernism. So actually this in that context, the term postcolonialism, which I described, so at the same time, it is also very important to understand the term colonialism. Okay, and when we talk about this term colonialism, here we need to be very clear. So far in our discussion, we have taken the term colonialism, because still we have not directly started our discussion with the post-colonialism. Okay, but now it is very important to look at it very closely. If we want to understand what colonialism is, then the historical origin of the word, which provides us some interesting clue. The word actually colonialism has at its root the word colony. The word colonialism, if you analyze, you find the root is the word colony. And this has been derived from the Latin word colonia. Okay, and if you go and search in the Oxford English Dictionary, you find that colonia as a forms or landed states. Okay, and which were located in newly conquered territories of the Roman Empire. So if we analyze, you see that how it is related with the history of Roman Empire, in which colonia as a forms or landed states which were located in newly conquered territories of the Roman Empire. And it were originally given as a gifts to Roman citizens who were mostly veteran soldiers. Now come to our this discussion of this understanding of colony and colonialism. It raises a number of interesting questions, so many points. You see, the first is that the colonialism or the process of establishing colonies is essentially a violent process. Okay, because it involves forcibly occupying the land and using the territorial resources that originally belonged to someone else. So colonies are basically sites of hostility, or you can say that also refers violence. Okay, because this colonial violence makes itself felt at several different levels, including social, economic, cultural. Only this is not only that is applicable only in acquiring the land, but social, economic, and cultural aspects. So these certain abstract kinds of violence are almost always
they come with the brutalities of physical violence too. Okay, and this violence very well described by Franz Fanon in this Wretched of the Earth. Okay, that we will discuss. So we see this in if we take the example of Peru, where during the early decades of the 16th century, actually Spanish, they reduced the native population from about 500 crore to something around 3 lakhs. Can you imagine? From 500 crore to something around 3 lakhs or more. You see, fine. Then in 1893, the war against the, there is a place in Zimbabwe. I'm just forgetting the name of that, where the British force actually, they almost
So they had the
killed
African
down.
opponents, I think.
Yeah.
In
I'm
Zimbabwe,
just.
they had
I think I'm forgetting the name. Actually, African.
So the Matabele Kingdom. Is it the Matabele Kingdom?
Yeah. Maybe. So if you look at, we find that here how in this process of colonization, the brutalities have been, means they have done. So that is why when we talk about colonialism in English literature, actually we talk about colonialism as we see that as a policy of a country which seeks to extend or retain its authority over other people or territories, and generally their aim is economic dominance. So in this process of colonization, colonizers, they impose their religion, their language, their just economic and so many other cultural practices on native peoples. So because they have to retain that authority, and how they can do, not simply at gunpoint. And when we talk about this colonization, and especially in African literature, actually in colonial Africa, okay, we see that the colonial experience of this direct rule and domination by this imperialist power, mostly we find that this post-colonial literature of this, in African context, actually there it has been considered as an act of one nation controlling another simply for economic gain. Okay, like England's control over Africa. Okay, so the colonial domination policy, this pursued by the powers of Europe from the second of the, you can say it was 16th century onwards. no, not 19th century. So actually, it was there up to Second World War. But when we talk about this, this colonialism or colonial power, so there is one very important quote I would like to bring to your notice. Actually, since we have mentioned African literature, so in post-colonial, and just I'm quoting from a book. This book is by B.K. Das. Okay, and by Franz Fanon itself. Actually, Fanon actually talks about the psychological aspects of colonialism and myth of racism. Okay, so I quote here: the literature of African countries, Australia, Bangladesh, Canada, Caribbean countries, India, Malaysia, Malta, New Zealand, Pakistan, Singapore, South Pacific Island
countries, and Sri Lanka are all post-colonial in this category, perhaps because of its current position of power and the neo-colonizing role it has played. Its post-colonial nature has not been generally recognized, but its relationship with the metropolitan center as it evolved over the last 2 centuries has been paradigmatic for post-colonial literature everywhere. What each of these literatures has in common beyond their special and distinctive regional characteristics is that, now just to pay attention, they emerged in their present form out of the experience of colonization and asserted themselves by foregrounding the tension with the imperial power and by emphasizing their differences from the assumptions of the imperial center. It is this which makes them distinctively post-colonial. Actually, you know, when you study this post-colonial literature or this process of, you know, colonization or this imperialistic aspect, so you find that they have been, you know, you might be familiar with Commonwealth literature, Third World literature. Now, earlier these terms, but when this post-colonial theory came into existence, after that, these terms people stopped, scholars stopped using, because this is a more suitable term. Actually, Commonwealth countries, they particularly, they are supposed, means somehow they write their literature in you know, actually means these nations. Okay, actually the term Commonwealth literature, it actually fell into just what the exact term would be, British colonies and their just writers. Actually, it is drawn upon them that the writers of the colonizers, okay, colonizers, England, do not form a part of this body of literature. They are not part of this Commonwealth literature or Third World literature. Okay, that is why post-colonial literature, it replaced this one, okay, in 80s and 90s, and the Third World literature and Commonwealth literature, we don't find that any more writers they are using. Post-colonial is a better word. Now, you see, since I was talking about that, how the emergence of, you know, this post-colonial literature and this present form of our experience of this colonization, it has been well asserted. It has been well asserted themselves by, you know, just in responding to the imperial power and just by emphasizing their differences from assumptions of the imperial center. Okay, it is this that makes them different or distinctively what we call post-colonial. But added to that, we you know, when we are talking about these, you know, post-colonial literature, we have to also think about not only colonialism but rewriting history, decolonization. Okay, there is a Ngugi wa Thiong'o, you know, famous word, decolonizing the mind, and there is one important essay in India just by Namvar Singh. Okay, decolonizing the Indian mind. That is also very much relevant and must study. All of you, you know, I recommend that all of you must study that. And there is a nationhood and nationalism. The idea of nationalism is also very important to understand. Okay, and valorization of cultural identity. Okay, actually these aspects are very much relevant when we talk about this concept of colonialism. So as I have said that colonialism is defined as a control by one power over a dependent area of or people.
So it occurs actually when one nation subjugates another, okay, and conquers its population by exploiting, and forces, language, religion, culture, practices, and indigenous people, they are forced to, so that they follow, okay. Now, if we are simply asked to have different characteristics of this colonialism, so political and legal domination over just an aligned society, this is one of the very important characteristics of colonialism. Now, another important feature which we find, that racial and cultural inequality. Racial and cultural inequality. Do you remember there is a text, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Anybody
Yes.
can tell what's the main idea in that?
Sir,
The
there was a
col-
protagonist called Okonkwo, and he used to be in some specific tribe. And there was some suppression of the African people. So they tried to show that African people are not so savage. They have some rich traditional culture. That is shown in that novel, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So, but
society, the African society, Igbo, the Igbo society is being,
Igbo community, yeah.
that's been talked about in the novel, that the culture of the Igbo society.
So why it is, things fall apart? How will you correlate with this? Because this is a very important study of post-colonial literature. Okay, things fall apart. So in what sense this title you would justify things fall apart? If
aspects of Africa, they are like they're not able to follow their civilization just because of these white man burden, and they are culturally snatching it away from these African people. So we can say the cultural values that are falling apart. Every relation, everything around them, that is falling apart. So this is how I can conclude. Why is this title apt for this?
So I think that the title of the novel, Things Fall Apart, because the center cannot hold them together, and the clan of Omofia falls because Okonkwo, who is the center of that community, fails to hold the people together.
yeah. And Okonkwo's son, even
Yes,
he accepted Christianity. Okay, so something, when insiders, they start praising the outsiders, here we take these colonial or Britishers as outsiders. So you remember when Okonkwo was on exile for 7 years, and in between, at that duration only, Britishers came over there, and they asked for a piece of land where they can just stay, they can build their church. So there was some place where people, they don't they believe that this place is not good, and if somebody would go there, he or she will die, like that. Such kind of rumors were there in that society, and they were very much in belief of that. Strongly they used to believe. So they had given that place only. So they Britishers, they built their church over there, and later on, psychologically, when they stayed over there, made their camp, and later on, church. So you see, the idea in their mind was that, yeah, they were successful in establishing that our God is superior than yours.
Sir, I read a novel called Maybe Tomorrow by Buri Monty Pryor.
Yeah.
Sir, it talked about the state-sponsored killings of the blacks. So would you want to comment something on that novel?
Actually, I have not read
In
that.
context to the,
I have not read that.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No problem.
I have not read that. But when you just mentioned this term, state-sponsored killing, so you might be familiar with the 2002 Godhra incident, which happened in Gujarat itself.
Yes, sir.
So there are certain narratives of this incident. Okay, there is one narrative which you are saying that it is a state sponsored killing. So those who were the opposition, they have just projected this as a state sponsored killing. But on the other hand, nothing like that. Okay, so actually there is a suddenly a term came to my mind.
Not understand, sir. I did not understand the last point you made. So can you just repeat it
Actually,
once?
I said that when you mentioned this state sponsored killing, okay, so that incident also, you know, there are two groups. Okay, so one group is saying that it is state sponsored killing, what happened in Godhra in 2002. Okay, another group is just denying the fact. No, this is not just true. This is not a state sponsored killing. And then
No, but
lots of issues are there.
it has to be taken in account with the perspective of the victim, no? Like we have to look at upon this with the perspective of the victim, not the one who is the assaulter.
So
That's
actually,
all I
you
would
know,
want to
when
say.
during
It's all about
raids,
the perspectives,
victims,
right?
yeah, I'm telling you, during such incidents, such raids, victims are, you know, I think especially that was between two communities. So big victims are from both the communities. So how will you decide? This is my question to you. And you know, nowadays there is a term post-truth era. We are living in a post-truth era.
Sir,
When we
undoubtedly the party or the side which is having more and more power and money will be the one who will be more likely to assault the
no,
weaker party. Sir.
not like that, not like
Sir, but
that.
in most of the
Okay.
cases, sir, in most of the cases, we can say that it can be a hypothesis.
Actually, you know,
So if we are writing a research on state-sponsored killings, so this can be a very nice hypothesis which I'm trying to make over here. I think it
yeah,
can
of
be
course.
nice.
But you know,
Because
there in such analysis, just let me tell, in such analysis, if your perspective, because you know, since all of us are literature student, and we are familiar with so many theories, so theories they work as a lens, what we when we put on feminist lens, immediately we start describing that they are exploited, they are suppressed. When we put on colonial lens, when we put on just we are this post-colonial lens, so entire narrative becomes different. Okay, so how will you reach? That is why, you know, when we study literary theory and criticism, in criticism, it is very well said that every writer, every critic is the product of the age in which he or she is, you know, they are living. Okay, because if somebody is from romantic era, you see that their work is very much reflected. Victorian is different, postmodern is different, because you see that after 1945, Second World War, suddenly you see that the impact of World War was so much that modern characteristics, you know, we say that modern age up to 1945. After that, what happened? The term modern, that was not actually enough. The characteristics which we find in modern age, they were not sufficient to describe the trauma, the feelings, the emotions which we find in the postmodern. That is why another term, postmodern. Now in today's discussion, in 21st century, writers, you know, from 1990 onwards started saying that this postmodern is also not sufficient. This term is not able to describe. Okay, because suddenly, you know, approach, thinking, mentality, characteristics, they are quickly changed. So that must be postmodernism. Okay. So writers, scholars in literary studies, just in order to comprehend the, you know, the thinking of the people, what is happening in the society, okay, they just accordingly they name the term. So that was something which we'll discuss in later on in the class. Okay, but Especially we were talking about in Okonkwo's context, this when he came back in the just after 7 years of exile, actually he was not able to hold his own people together. So personally he felt somehow that defeated, and he committed suicide. So can you imagine that such a powerful person, Okonkwo, he committed suicide itself. So for him, nothing was there. And there was another, some very important point. Britishers came over there in hands, Bible, okay, Bible was in their hand. But later on, you see, they have captured all their territories, all their lands, and they have taught their religion to them. So they have handed over Bible. Now you read the Bible and acquired entire territory. So when we are studying this post-colonial literature, we have to keep in mind, especially narrative. What kind of narrative is being said by them? That we need to observe very closely, because when as a research scholar you are expected to do objective study, and then after understanding the text objectively, then apply whatever is suitable theory. For example, this post-colonial context, if you study simply, you see there is a novel which is written in a colonial period in India, Untouchable by Mulk Raj Anand. Okay, and in Untouchable, Bakha is a character, but this Bakha sweeper, okay, who comes from outcast, he is since this is a stream of consciousness novel, if you look at the psyche of Bakha, you can very well analyze that he's a rebel inside. What we find in post-colonial literature, they are giving a counter to the colonial narrative. That is why in India nowadays there is so much hue and cry, because that the history which we are studying, that is not our history. There is so many just what we call different narratives are there. They are not facts, because if any generation for 100 years you start telling something that this is true, you will accept that. So Macaulay's Minutes, all of you must study, especially if you want to study Indian context, this entire process of colonization. Okay, so you will understand better that how in a planned way, means we have been made to think that they are superior. Oh, sometimes we feel happy when you go to visit some places and you see some Britishers or white people, you expect that, oh, let me have just a selfie with them. Why this idea? We spend so much money on fair and lovely, fair and handsome. Why we want to look white? Okay, because this is in our mind that white is good. So how this idea came? Everything is in planned way. Okay. Everything is in
Conrad
planned.
is also trying to make the same point in his novel, The Heart of Darkness, that white is good.
Actually, Heart of Darkness, Conrad, he justified, these, Africans, there is a term, I am just missing that, what they have just, he has used. There is a term
Savage.
I'm missing. Okay. Yeah, that is, they are savage, uncivilized, barbaric. Okay, but I'm missing that there was very important point about Heart of the Darkness, and which actually Chinua Achebe, he just countered. Okay,
Yes,
because
sir.
they tried to prove that they are uncivilized. Okay, and we have civilized them. And only few are participating in the discussion. I have seen. Others, they were only silent listeners. Pragati Trivedi, any question? Any understand? What you derived from today's discussion? The idea of post-colonialism and colonialism is clear.
Yes, sir.
No, I'm asking to Pragati Trivedi.
Oh, I thought you were asking to everyone.
No, I'm just asking to her.
Yes, sir.
Manya Mishra. Okay, Pragati. Because in this online classes, really it's good, and this is going to exist in future years also, because from any place we can connect to anyone and we can communicate. But on the other side, there is a less interaction. Okay, as we do in classroom. Okay, and in this mode we find less interaction.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Manya.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, sir. I understood the difference between post-colonialism and colonialism, and I think that was a great discussion by you. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody can tell why post-colonial literature is important?
Sir, I think it's important because so the human consequences of colonialism have to be studied in detail, and colonialism was not enough to actually the repercussions of colonialism on us and the way it impacted the countries all over the world. I think it's very important to have insights and read the texts that have been written post that to actually understand the impression that we've all had in our conscience and our subconscious, and how deeply has it impacted all of us around the world. I think it's important in that sense.
Yeah, that is why it has been considered as a major literature. Okay, because without understanding, first both, colonizer and colonized. Okay.
Right, sir.
I
In
think
sum
that
total.
it's simply. Okay.
Yeah, continue.
Sir, I think it's simply effort to not repeat the mistakes we did in the past and learn from the mistakes that have been.
But there is a
done.
neocolonialism, huh? And that is purely
Yes,
economic.
Exactly, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And where China, America, these superpower countries, they are just invading. So now it's time to wind up the discussion. So it's less than 1 minute is left. So really, I enjoyed talking to you people, and see you in the next class tomorrow at 1 p.m. Okay. So all of you join there and we'll continue our discussion.
It was really a very nice session, sir.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Yes, sir.
Thank
It was
you, sir.
indeed a very good lecture.
Thank you, sir. So it was our honor to have you. Thanks for the online classes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice
Definitely.
session, sir. Enjoyed a lot. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Take care.